keratin. So this is very much like your nails in your hands and in your feet. So all the animal does is the animal actually goes through the water with its mouth open, and the right whale, which we're going to look at here, usually is at the surface of the water and just moves along the surface of the water and skims all of the tiny, tiny little copepods, and it's trapped in these hairs. And then eventually it goes to the back, and the animal just has a large tongue and licks all the tiny animals off the actual baleen. And so this is very important, and obviously we have to look at why the animal, where it goes, its habitat, and how and when it arrives at a particular area. And we're going to go and talk about that as well. So that's baleen. And quickly, obviously, this is a very different sort of animal. These are teeth from a sperm whale. So obviously, a sperm whale wouldn't be eating tiny copepods that you couldn't see. It eats larger animals. And the sperm whale would normally eat giant octopus. So it uses these teeth to actually eat and cut the giant octopus apart. So these are different behaviors depending on what kind of animal, what kind of whale we're talking about. And also, I just brought another piece of an artifact, is like the backbone of a whale, and you can actually see here the curve, and this is the end of the animal. And the curve is very much, obviously, we have a backbone, but it needs to be straight because you want to stand up straight. But the whale is very much a different sort of animal, and so it actually has a very different feel to its spine. And so the animal is curved. And here you can see, obviously, in the center, this is where all the nerve endings, they run from the brain to the back of the animal. So that's just a few things that I wanted to show you, but we're going to talk more specifically about right whales. And I have worked on right whales for, as I said, 24 years, and initially doing research, and now I'm on the management side. So now I'm looking at how we can help the animals, putting regulations into place. And we're going to talk a little bit about what has been done over the past 24 years, because the population has changed quite a bit. So the right whale that we're going to look at goes from Canada all the way down the East Coast into the United States and ends up in off of Florida, and it calves. The mothers give birth down in Florida. And this animal is very close to shore all the time. It's very, very close to shore. And the reason that it's called right, R-I-G-H-T, right, is in years gone by when the animals were hunted, it was the right animal to kill because it was close to shore and it floated when it was harpooned. Most other whales, if they're harpooned, they sink. So this animal was targeted and it was called the right whale. When you look at it and you talk about humpbacks, they've got a hump. Fin whales have a large fin. Well, the right whale was called right whale because it was the right one to hunt. It floated and didn't sink in the water. It stayed on the surface of the water when it was harpooned, and the hunters called it the right whale. So that is how it got its name. And we're going to look at a little bit of the morphology and what the animal looks like. So I'm going to start the presentation and chat to you guys, and you can actually ask as many questions as you want, and please do when we are finished with the presentation. So I will see if I can start it off. It's not opening. All right, sorry. Can you guys see that?
Not yet.
Not yet? Oh. Okay. How about now?
No.
No.
Oh, not yet. Go to share screen. You have to select the Chrome tab.
Uh-huh.
Not the entire window, not the application window. You have to select the Chrome tab and you have to select the specific tab
Okay.
you want to share.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Great.
You got it?
Yeah, we got
Okay.
it.
So, as I said, for the past 24 years, we've been looking at right whales, and the population was only around 250 animals around 1993, and that is critical, endangered. 250 animals left in the whole population. But since then, it has done a little bit better, and the population, the numbers have increased from 250 to about a high of 540. But the problem is over the last 4 or 5 years, we've lost a lot of animals. And I'm going to show you the problems and we're going to discuss them. And you guys are going to see the issues that we have to go through. So, all right. So just quickly, I'm going to talk a little bit about the biology of right whales, what they look like, and then talk about some of the major problems, and then hopefully bring you up to date and what's happening in 2020. So I look at two of the main acts that actually help marine mammals. And we act under the Marine Mammal Protection Act and the Endangered Species. So the first one, all marine mammals are covered under. It doesn't matter what they are, dolphins, porpoise, seals. And then the Endangered Act, the Endangered Species Act, covers animals. It can be sea turtles, whatever, that are more endangered and that are likely to actually become extinct. So here in the United States, we have the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and it helps us to save a lot of animals. And we say if you shoot, and take could be you hunt or you trying to harass an animal. And harassment could be anything, following them in a boat. A lot of people go out in where I am located on the weekends on boats and they actually follow whales. Well, that is illegal. You have to stay far, about 500 feet from a right whale. And we will talk a little bit about that. So here we have all of the marine mammals that I and all of my comrades and co-workers help to try and save. And right at the top is the northern right whale. And that is the species that we're going to talk more about today than the other humpbacks, fin, and blues. But they are all endangered. So a right whale, you'll see that the right whale doesn't have a dorsal fin. It's very smooth on top. And a mother and a male will sometimes be 60 feet long. And 60 feet long is quite a large animal, obviously. And when you look at a baby being born, the baby could be 15 feet when it's born, the day it's born, 15 feet. And it usually actually travels from, as I said, from Canada down to Florida within a year and back up again. So that is its habitat. It goes from the Canadian cold waters down to Florida warmer waters to give birth and then back up. And it's always very close to the actual shoreline, always very close. And that is one of the major problems that we have, that the actual animal is so close to shore. All right, so the problems that we see that the animal, why it has a major issue with humans, because it's slow moving and it remains at the surface a lot of the time. So if an animal is at the surface, it has a major problem with boating, obviously, because if it's at the surface and not down in deep water, then it's more likely to get hit by vessels and shipping. So I showed you the baleen, and the baleen allows it to skim feed. As I say, it feeds on, we call it zooplankton, and it is a copepod. And if you actually put it under a microscope, you would see that it looks very much like a crab, but it's so small that you visually can't see the food that the animal scoops up in millions and millions of these at one time. And the animal, the right whale, will not feed unless there is a specific amount of food in the water. Otherwise, it will move on and look for areas where the copepod is so plentiful. And here is some photographs of the animal right at the top of the water. And you can see here the baleen that I showed you is in its mouth. So it skims, goes along the top of the water and skims the actual copepods out of the water through skim feeding. And here's a better photograph. You see the animal with its mouth open and working its way through the water. And it does this right here in Cape Cod off Massachusetts. And it's usually here for about 2.5 months of the year, and then it moves further. So nearly every year it comes to Massachusetts to feed and then moves on. And right here is at the top of the rostrum. This is the mouth again. You see that there is a bony structure, and on the top of that are white cymede, and they are this gives the animal a very unique feature, in that, very much like your fingerprint, this is how we actually identify all of the 500 animals that were alive at one time. So if you're in a plane or you're in a boat, you can actually see these fingerprints on the animal, and we actually name the animal via the fingerprint. And here you will see, this is the animal that it actually feeds on. And again, on the left-hand side of your screen, there is a jar, and this is where all the actual copepods have been skimmed out of the water, and they are millions within that jar alone. And this is in Cape Cod Bay, where we actually did some sampling. Here is a little map of the right whales, and as you can see, they start up here. This is Canada. Can you see the cursor?
Yes.
Okay, so up here is Canada, and this is the Bay of Fundy in Canada. And up here is actually the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which is further north. And then the animals travel down, and here is where we're located right now. This is Massachusetts, and the animal stays, as we said, in Massachusetts water, either in here within Cape Cod Bay or out in a little deeper water, but it's always close to shore, and then travels down towards Florida, and this is where it gives birth. And as we said, this is a mom and calf, and the calf here is a new calf born only about a day or two, and it's about 15 feet long. So, as I said, the animal is so close to shore, and you can actually see here, this is photographs I've taken in Florida, and this is the beach. And this is probably about only 80 to 100 yards off the shore. And here are the animals, and they are traveling up and down a very deep channel. But this is so close to shore that people in Florida on the beach walk up and down, and they can actually see the whales. So here is actually a very good photograph of a mom and a calf. And the mom, again, as I said, the Siameses that are on the top of the animal here give it a unique pattern. Each of the individual whales, both male and female, have unique patterns. And it's very much, as I said, very much like a fingerprint of a human being, because the fingerprint in a human being is unique, and so are these. And it allows us to identify the whales a little easier. An example in humpback whales, it's the tail that we look at. We look at the tail of the humpback, and this is unique in the humpback species. Is identification is always via their the cuttings and the type of unique pattern that they have in humpbacks. Okay, so what is the issues here? The issues are very much like for all marine mammals. There are two big issues, and trying to protect whales is a major concern, especially when the right whale is so close to shore. So shipping and gears. So when fishermen put gear in water, there's usually ropes attached, and this is a vertical rope. And then there's ground lines along here. And this is like lobster pots or crab pots. And the whale usually dives down and for some reason gets kind of entangled. And once it hits a rope, it usually swings around and turns. And that's when it happens when the rope gets wrapped around, usually the fins. And here you see shipping. Obviously, so much product comes into the United States via shipping, and whales are, and especially if, as I said, right whales are close to shore, they're always going to become somewhere close, and that is what we're trying to do, is we're trying to mitigate and trying to lessen some of the interactions that carry on between marine mammals and shipping. So in the United States, right here is a very big fishing area. And Cape Cod is called Cape Cod because at one time there were so many cod, people said you could walk on the fish. And all of the different types of gears that are used for fishing, gill nets, trawls, long lines, all of these can get entangled in whales. And as you see here on the lower photograph, it's the buoy that's trailing off a rope is trailing from the whale. And obviously this gets wrapped around and stops the whale, and it can actually bury into their blubber, and it can eventually kill. It doesn't allow the animal to grow. And here you just have like some idea of, this is a net on the bottom of the, or close to the bottom of the surface. And here are ground lines. So the animal dives down and on the way up hits some of the gear, and entanglements occur. And it's not unique to the United States. It happens everywhere where there's fishing and where there is actually marine mammals. We have a disentanglement team that actually go out and try and disentangle right whales. It's obviously it's very dangerous and is not to be done by untrained people. People can die because whales are don't know that you're going out there to assist them if that's what you're trying to do. And we have had accidents occur, and it's not to be taken lightly. So we have disentanglement teams along the Atlantic coast that we actually fund. And sometimes the weather doesn't allow us to actually help the animal, so we have to attach a telemetry buoy, and this allows us track the animal and find the animal again when the weather gets good enough for us to go out and disentangle the rope and the gear from the animal. So we do and are able to track whales because of the telemetry buoy, but usually these are social animals and they rub up against each other, and the calves rub up against the mom all the time. So buoys are lost. So it's very unusual for a buoy to actually stay more than a couple of weeks on an animal. It usually uses a suction cup, so it's kind of sucked onto the blubber and then is lost because the whales are touching each other. This is just a short idea of how many animals that we see in a year that are actually entangled in gear. So if you look at right whales, and then humpback and fins and sei, all of these are endangered, and it comes to 43 in 2017 that we know of. But this is only the animals that we know. We obviously miss quite a few. And that is the problem, is that when you're looking at right whales and the animals are so few, and 9 to be confirmed entangled is quite a lot. And then the other issue that I deal with is more specifically is all of these photographs are close to actually, big issues, because the animals are on top of the ships. The ships don't know they're there. The animals sometimes don't know that the ships are there, and we have ship mortalities because of interaction. So it's a unique problem, really. It's more of an issue for right whales because right whales are so close to shore. If you're out in the deep ocean and you're down in the water column, then you're not going to have as much of a problem. Okay, so this is actually very close to Boston. This photograph was taken and the whale is diving to get away from the vessel. Yeah. And it's all types of boating. This is a pleasure craft. And as you can see, the person in the front is taking a photograph and thinks, this is great. But you're harassing the animal and you're not allowing the animal its own space. And this is, for us, is harassment and is an issue. Because if the animal is stressed out because it's being targeted, and humans are only there hopefully to try and, look at the animal and say that they have seen the animal, but it can harass and you stress. That's the worst thing, is you're stressing the animal out. So the end product of a ship hitting an animal is usually not a very good outcome. And we passed a ship speed rule to slow all vessels down to 10 knots. So a large container ship that goes across the ocean is usually traveling, quite faster than 10 knots. And we have found that the only way to try and minimize ship interaction is to slow the ship down. So for right whales, we do know that they are traveling up and down the coast, and they do this every single year. So we can follow them, and we know that they are in Massachusetts, which is the upper map on the right-hand side. So we close off areas, and we tell shipping that you need to slow down between these particular times. So in Cape Cod Bay, there is annually, they're called seasonal management areas, and all boats 65 feet or larger have to slow to 10 knots. And we have found since 2013 that if this is followed, that we have a very good result. And then the lower map on the right-hand side is all the way down the coast. All the way down the coast is right whales moving down from the northern part of the US down to the southern part of the US. And we do this seasonally. So we call it seasonal management areas. And they are constant every year. And we know that they are going to actually be there. So we do also have obviously issues because this is again is the mid-Atlantic and Florida. So all of these yellow areas, any boating that's along there has to slow between November through April, because we know the right whales will visit there every single year. And then down at this is the seasonal management in the south, where the mothers actually give birth to the calves. And again, these area is a requirement that you slow to 10 knots. So obviously a whale can travel anywhere at any time, and we have to try and cover them. We send out survey planes and small boats to look for the whales, and they are found obviously outside of seasonals, and we cover this through, we call it a dynamic management area. So if a whale is seen or heard, we actually put a 15-day block around the actual animals. And you can see the pink square here. So we've seen that there are right whales, and they are there outside of normal season. So we put a dynamic management area in place. And all shipping, whether it's US or foreign, has to actually slow down. And here you can see the shipping lane. So it's very close to the shipping lane from New York going into Boston. And so obviously this would be a very busy area. So the boats either going from Boston to New York or New York to Boston, and we have closed off and asked all shipping to slow to 10 knots. This is just a map showing, like, at any one time we have 4, and this was in 2011. It happens all year, every year, but this map I just took because at this one particular time there was 4 dynamic management areas in place. So shipping in all of these areas had to slow. And how do we know a boat is in the area? There is every vessel that is 65 feet or larger has something called AIS, and it's automatic identification system. It's like a GPS. On your phone, you can tell where you are if you want to through GPS, Well, this is the same kind of a system on boats that are larger than 65 feet. So you can tell the direction a boat is going in, you can tell which boat it is. So this is how we keep a check on vessels coming and going to port in the US. And this is the recommendation for vessels to stay 500 yards, about 5 football fields away from whales. If you particularly see them, you're not supposed to approach them. Right whales, you're supposed to stay as far away as you possibly can. So the other big, I guess, mitigation issue that we have is slow boats down, but we also have the other option of when there is a lane. This is coming into Boston, the city of Boston, and this was the lane for all vessels to travel. And all of these dots here are right whale observations. Yeah. So at this time, you could see that the shipping lane was going right through an area where many right whales were seen and observed and hung out. And for a couple of years, we were requesting that there would be a change to the shipping lane coming into Boston, because there had been numerous mortalities, numerous right whale deaths, because shipping was hitting and interacting with them. So we were, after a lot of persuasion and a lot of meetings, we were able to move the actual shipping lane north to an area where there were less whales seen. But this took about 2 or 3 years. And since we've changed the shipping lane into Boston, there has been no mortalities. There has been no mortalities compared to prior to actually changing the regulation. So that was a major benefit and a big plus. So we got the traffic, it's called TSS, Traffic Separation Scheme, and we got that changed. And this is obviously the outcome, which isn't a nice sight to see, but this is actually a whale that has been hit by a vessel, and it's not a very pretty sight. But this is the problem that we are facing because of the interaction between shipping or vessels and animals, right whales. So for us to try and help us along here in this region that I work in, we have an array of buoys, acoustic buoys. So we can hear the whale if it's in the area. We don't have to observe it from a plane or from a boat. We can actually listen, because the whales have a particular song, and it's called the up song. And right whales don't have a very large vocal presence compared to humpback whales that can sing for half an hour at a time. Right whales are they're very minimal, but they are very unique in the upcalling. And it's kind of like a clicking sound. So we can hear when the whales are here. We don't have to see them. We can actually hear them. So, can you hear me? All right. I don't think the sound is coming through, because can you hear anything?
No.
No. All right. You hear the clicks? Okay. All right. I think we're going to lose the sound here, and that's the major part of. Anyway, so what we have here is we have when the sun is out, most of the sun disappears once you go down about 600 or 700 feet, and below that, it's sound that is more important rather than sight. So the first 200 meters, sight is very important. And then after that, sound is a better indicator. And that's why marine mammals use sound as a both for their lifestyle and for navigation and for communication. Because if you're in the deeper waters, you really can't see past 200 meters. Light doesn't penetrate. So if you're looking for your food or you're trying to communicate, you're better off with sound. So yeah, these are not coming through. These are examples of different marine mammals and the sounds that they make. The first one was bottlenose dolphin, which is kind of clicking, and it goes. And obviously here again, sorry, this sound isn't coming through. I apologize. So the question here is, the animal eats tiny zooplankton. It grows to about 55 feet and is endangered. What would you call that animal? And that is a right whale. And it is like the bus on the right-hand side. That's as how large it can be.
Yeah.
Well, so starting way back in 1990, the population was down around, we're believe it was 250, 260, around there. And it has grown very slightly all the way up to about 2010. And then it starts a decline and has been declining since the last probably 7 to 8 years. And we now believe, it says here 450, we think we're less than that. We think we're about 410 animals. And that the big issue here is that over the last 3 or 4 years, there has been major mortality in Canadian waters. And the reason for that is that we believe waters are changing, climate is changing the water temperature, and the food source is moving. And I showed you a map more of the Bay of Fundy, which is South Canada. And now all the animals were living off the Bay of Fundy, but now they have moved. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So really just to summarize, first of all, entanglements from fishing gear, ship strikes, obviously from vessels, and then other threats, which might be what? Pollution, plastics, it could be anything, weather. So they're the main threats, but it's mainly entanglements and ship strikes. And we've put a process into place for each of these individual problems. So we're trying to solve these problems.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is not a pretty sight, but it's a dead whale because it was ship strike, and this was from 2004. We have plenty more, but anyway, this was a shot that I took. So where are we? If the population of right whales is at 450, a single loss can actually jeopardize the population. And when we're looking at such a small population, 450, how many females are among the 450? And this is where we actually have to separate some of the issues. So this is from 2017. I said over the last 3 years, we've had major mortality in Canada. And in 2017, we had 16 animals that died. And in 2019, we had 17 that died. So over 3 years, we've lost 5% of the population. And that's not sustainable. losing 5% of any population is not sustainable, and more so when there are very few calves. So when we're looking at two big issues, entanglement and ship strike, you can see here from 2000 to 2014, ship strike is kind of lessened and entanglement from fishing gear has increased. And this is, we have been managing fisheries, but we're still getting entanglements. So we've put a lot of regulations into place for fishing gears and restrictions, but the population is still getting entangled. And here, the difference between male and female. We only have about 100 females in the population.
We just dropped. Yeah. I don't know. Can you hear anything, anybody? No, that's what I thought. Somehow we dropped. Maybe his computer battery died or something like that. So
Yeah.
we'll wait, because he may be able to log back in.
Yeah, we'll wait for a while.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I can.
That's a really great information that he shared. You know, it's
really
there's a
interesting.
lot to process.
It's fascinating. Let's see if I can get back to it.
He's back.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Peter, are you there? Peter, we can't hear your voice. Lorraine, can you hear his voice?
No, but I don't think he wants to be on this slide. I think maybe he's trying to get back to where he left off before he dropped.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Wait a second. See. Looks like he's trying to get to the slide. So. Peter, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
I think he's talking. He's saying something, right?
I'm not
No?
sure if he's trying to find his slide,
Yeah.
but usually he would be saying something anyway, so I'm wondering if somehow the sound is off.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, now we can. Now we can.
Sorry about
Yeah, it's all.
All right. So, sorry, I was here at this population, and you can see that the numbers of females is much lower than males. And so when we only have 100 females in the total population, then when you look at the animals that are of the age 10 years plus, because that's when the females become old enough to give birth, you're only really talking about 40 females in the overall population. And so that is so small a group to actually continue a population. It is not heard of that it couldn't grow, but it actually needs quite a lot of management and hopefully protection to actually allow the population to increase. So the males are about 300 in the population, and the females are only about 100, 110. And the survival rate, when you're looking at overall survival rate, it's less for females. Females die much younger than males. And the reason for this is, we believe, is that mainly shipping, the females are less likely to get out of the way of a vessel than males are. Males are not that great either. When you compare the species to humpbacks, humpbacks seem to be more aware of vessel traffic than right whales. And that has not been proven, but it is a kind of an understood issue that we are looking at. So females, if you're looking at the population of right whales, they're less likely to survive. They die because of one reason or another in the overall population. So how are we in my organization trying to help? We are doing aerial surveys that we have. When the whales are in a particular area, we get up in the air probably twice or three times a week when the weather allows us. We do ship research. We also try and tag the animals when we can. And there are lots of other research going on trying to benefit the animals and hopefully allow them to survive. And anyway, there are a couple of things that the public can do to help. Admire mammals from a distance. The problem is when most people, if they're out in a boat or even on a whale watch, they want to get close. The closer, the better. And that is disturbing the animals and really is not allowing them to behave as they should. And, you know, if you're ever on a boat, please, great to watch them, great to observe them, but observe from a distance. I'm not going to go into this, but this is something, sometimes a lot of whales or a lot of marine mammals die, and we have to look into the reason. It could be red tide, pollution, getting hit, but there's usually a lot of animals, and when there is, it's called an unusual mortality event, and the event could continue for months. So usually that would be a disease like we're going through at the moment, coronavirus, and it continues. Well, that can happen in marine mammals as well. And we have to explore it and try and find the reason why these animals are passing and dying. Again, they are marine mammals, just like we are. And you should never, whether it's a sea otter or whatever it is, you're close to a sea lion or a sea, don't go near it. It's a mammal, you're a mammal, and there can be an exchange of bacteria, and that's just a kind of a warning. Is biologically you shouldn't go near it, but also for the health of yourself and the health of the animal. I think I'm going to finish there. So if there's any questions.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, Peter. I really appreciate all of your presentation, and I'm so glad it worked smoothly for you. What we'll do is we'll stop the screen sharing. And then I think that with this size group, we have about 13 in the group, Manjula. I think what we can do is use audio.
Yes,
if you have a question,
Peter, are you there? Yes, he's
Yeah,
there.
can you see me?
Yeah, can you turn on the video?
Turn on the video, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, thank you.
I don't like
I don't see him yet. That's I don't see him yet. Do you? Oh, is he in a different box?
I can see him.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Fine. That's perfect. So if you have a question, put it into the chat, and then we'll call out you to ask your question if you'd like.
Thank you, Peter, for a great session. It was very educational. I'm based in Dubai, UAE. Now, with regards to the right whale, is the habitat only in the areas that you've mentioned, and not around the world?
The habitat of the right whale. So at one time, there is the northern right whale and there's the southern right whale. Okay, they are two different species. And at one time, we believe there was the northern Atlantic right whale, which I work on, and the northern Pacific right whale, which would be off of California and Oregon, etc. And we thought they were the same species. But then we also thought that was extinct. We hadn't seen that animal for a long time. And then about 10 years ago, we found that there was a very small number of right whales, Pacific right whales. And they are still there. They are being researched, but they're a different subspecies. So we have the North Atlantic right whale that doesn't interact with the southern right whale because they are very distant apart and they never come near each other. So there's not distribution, there's not mixing of genetic material, never has been. And yeah, so they're a population unto themselves.
That's good. Fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question actually from Tony. He wanted to know why you chose the right whale. Why did you focus on that particular one?
It leaps out at you. It leaps out because there are so few of them. And when I came to the United States in '93, the population was down to about 250.
Wow.
And as I said, from then to about 20 years on, it probably topped out at around 520. You know, there or there about 520. We believe from old research that there was 20,000 right whales.
Wow.
And so when you're looking at 200 to 20,000, something went wrong. Obviously, we hunted them and we thought we hunted them to extinction, but that wasn't right. And it was only about in 1990, which is only 30 years ago, that we actually discovered that they were still alive. We thought they had become extinct.
Wow.
So it was very, what would you say, I was very soon arrived in the United States, and it was only two or 3 years that they actually had begun to notice that the whale had not become extinct.
I see.
So it was easy to actually, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're looking at humpback, you're talking about, like, they have been delisted in our area because there is now so many of them. So it depends, but right whales were, and it was not alone, was it easy to say something needs to be done, but there was funding as well. So that helped.
Mm-hmm. Rachel, are you there? Thank you.
Yeah.
Rachel? Rachel? Rachel had a question of how many species of whales are present in Pakistan?
Ooh, that now I would not have an idea of. I could not tell you in Pakistan.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't worked there, so I wouldn't even try to attempt. But I can find out and get back to you.
That would be great.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
I have a question too. So I'm in Sri Lanka. It is an island. So we have seen whales around the ocean. So especially in the eastern side of the Sri Lanka, so we can see so many whales, but occasionally, but only occasions they are coming into the sure, but my question is, we have an open university, Ocean University of Sri Lanka. So they are recruiting BSc in Fisheries and Marine Science and Coastal and Marine Resources Management, Marine Engineering, and Oceanography, Aquaculture, and Seafood Technology. So there are so many degree programs that they are conducting in this university. So my question is, what are the qualifications that they need to work in this field? I mean, in NOAA or maybe some
Right.
section in NOAA. Yeah.
Right. So again, just as you said, the oceans and marine biology are such a wide array of careers. It's not just pure biology. There's physical oceanography, chemical oceanography. Anyway, but basically you do need a degree. I came from a foreign country. I came with my undergraduate was from the University of Aberdeen in Scotland, and my graduate was from Birmingham in England. And I, even though I had research and I was working on quite a few projects in different countries, when I came to the United States, I was up against such a wide array of people that were coming out of university from known colleges. So mine was an unknown entity, really. You then get standardized in the United States. They look to see what kind of an institution, educational institution you've come from, and they standardize it. And that's what has to happen. And it happened with me, but you're working overseas and you don't have United States work history. So you're competing against people unless you're very world renowned. You know what I mean? So I'm not world renowned. I'm known now in the region because I've had 20 years here, and I'm known in the right whale world. But it's difficult, but you do need a degree, and you definitely need, if you can, postgraduate study as well.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Yeah, that's amazing. We have people from all over the world, Peter. Not sure if everyone has actually seen a whale. What's the closest you've been to a whale? I know you had a story that you told my students once that they were fascinated by.
Yeah. So, I've been on planes. I did a lot of field work, and that is fantastic, and it's great. You're in a very closed environment because you're in a four-seater plane, and you're in the four-seater plane taking photographs and observing the whales. So you come upon a whale and the plane banks and goes round and round, and you take photographs and you're observing. And if you're doing that for 6 or 7 hours, that's a difficult situation and can be, some people, it's claustrophobic. It's a long time in a small plane, but it's also empowering, and it is so great to do. So I did that for a couple of years and then moved on. And I did a lot of research, and one of the greatest experiences I ever had in my life was we were out probably about 400 miles off the coast of the US, somewhere on the mid-Atlantic. So we're down probably a couple of hundred miles from New York City and out about 400 miles. And we came upon a blue whale. And that is the largest animal in the world. It's as big as a football field.
Wow.
And there was nothing else out there. So there was us. We get out on a Zodiac, an inflatable. So there's three of us. And what we were doing, we were trying to take biopsies, take a small piece of blubber, and then analyze it afterwards. And so I'm out there with two colleagues in a Zodiac, small blow-up Zodiac, and the whale is looking at us, and you know it knows you're there. And it was just phenomenal. We were out there for about half an hour with the whale, and it could have turned at any one time and flicked its tail, and we'd all have been dead, because all of us, the three of us, knew we were like, we knew the whale knew we were there and allowed us be there. And the biopsy that we took really would be just like a fly landing on you. You wouldn't even notice it, you know. So it's a small piece of blubber that we took to analyze. But because it was so serene, it was quiet, and the animal, all you heard was the animal leaving its excess water out. And it's blowing at us, and yeah, it was riveting, and it was very life changing. I knew I was in the right place at the right time, and I was doing the right thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Rachel, did you have a question? Rachel?
I have a question too.
Yeah.
What is the status of blue whale?
Sorry?
Is that your question, Rachel, right? Rachel? What is the status of blue whales?
Oh, what is the status of the blue whale? All right, the population status, I guess. So very hard to predict, because it is usually a very, it's a single isolated animal on its own. It's in deep, deep water. It's way off the coast usually. The odd time blue whales come in towards shore. To actually fund a large study on blue whales would cost a lot of money, because they're not congregating a lot of the time. I don't have I don't even think there is a population. There is an estimate. It's not a population study, it's an estimate. And it's a best estimate. So it's more biologists getting together and trying to come up with an idea that comes out with an estimate population.
Okay, Lorraine. So do we have any questions? Oh, yeah, we got one more. Oh, no. Yes, Gina.
Yes. So I teach students here about the plastic pollution impact on sea animals. Yeah. And the first project I did was of the whale that got beached upon the shores in Norway in Feb 2017. And that kind of shook me, because they found 30 plastic bags in its gut. Now, in your experience with all the whales that you have found beached on the shores, you've mentioned that mostly it's due to shipping. But do you actually get involved with autopsies where you investigate the death rate due to plastic pollution?
Okay, so yeah, so every animal that we can get to, we do a necropsy. It's called a necropsy.
Okay.
And yeah, so we have vets that are on board that actually go out. And I've been another story to tell you about a necropsy, which is anyway, which happened here about 10 years ago. But plastic, yes, does play a part. So it clogs the digestive system. And obviously, like humans or like any species, the food you take in and how you digest it and how it is used in the body is very important. And plastics totally upset that in many different ways, in that the stomach is bloated because the plastic actually blows up inside and doesn't, it takes probably 100 and something years to disappear, even in the ocean, right? But when you're in an enclosed environment, it doesn't happen as much because the bacteria aren't there. We've found it in a few animals, but not in as how would you call it, as a major concern, all right, for whales. But it is there, and it is an issue. It's more so for animals, so it depends on the species. So like loggerhead, sea turtles, they feed on jellyfish. And if they come upon a plastic, they see it as a jellyfish. So they are a major concern, right? So it depends, you know, like right whales eat copepods. They don't think usually plastic, and they're looking for thousands and millions of copepods together. So if they scoop up the water and there's plastic in it, but it's not usually a target, it's not mistaken as food. Okay.
Interesting.
A necropsy, I was coming down the Cape. I was working in Boston, and there was a dead right whale, and we were doing a necropsy. And sorry?
Nothing.
Okay, sorry. We were doing a necropsy, and there was probably about 14 of us, and it was in a shore, part of the ocean, or sorry, part of the beach that is not used as a beach for normal beach going. It's very isolated. And I got back into my car. I took all my gear off, and I put my gear in the back of the truck. And I stopped to get gas. And this young kid comes out, put gas in my car. And I rolled down the window, and he goes, he goes, "What is the smell?" And I'm going, "I'm sorry, I wasn't really paying attention." And he goes, "It's rotten. What is the smell?" And he put the gas in the car. And while he was putting the gas in the car, I was like, "Oh my," I left all my oil skins in the back of the car or the back of the truck, and they were stinking. And so was I, obviously. And he comes back and he goes, "Something is dead in your car." And I was like, "Oh my God, I got to get out of here fast." And it was because we were doing a necropsy and the animal was a little stinky.
Wow. Godwin, do you have a question?
Yes, I really appreciate all these fascinating issues. I like them, and he identified the primary threat to be the ships and the also fishers. And my question is, I am wondering if there is any legal measures to be taken against ships and fishers who are causing these fabulous creatures there.
So we do believe that there are regulations in place, but we do believe that most vessels and most fishermen are not there trying to interact. They're not trying to kill whales. So we have been able to identify, on occasion, a boat will come into, or a ship or a vessel will come into port, and the actual animal is on the ship, and has been, the captain didn't know it, and someone sees it and said, "Excuse me, but there's something in the waterline," and they find out, and it's actually a marine mammal that has been struck by the vessel and is stuck on the vessel. So it's not something we try to prosecute. If we believe that, and I was talking to law enforcement a week ago. It's something called a NOVA. So it's a notice. It's given out by the General Counsel, and what they do is they prosecute vessels that speed, that are going through the areas, the seasonal management area, that is a requirement for them to go 10 knots. If we notice that vessels are doing this egregiously, meaning they do it again and again and again, we will prosecute. But usually when a vessel hits an animal, it's not trying to do it purposely. It's usually by accident. Unless somebody is targeting the animal, okay? And vessels are not doing that usually. And gears, we have been able to identify individual fishermen, but again, a fisherman doesn't want to lose gear because it costs so much money. He's out there fishing, he's not out there trying to catch marine mammals. And unless, again, it's egregious, meaning that the same fisherman is doing it again and again, it's usually by accident. And normally, probably about 30 to 40% of the time, if a marine mammal becomes entangled in fishing gear and the fisherman goes out to his gear, he will call us and he will tell us, because he doesn't want to lose his gear. He'll call us and say, "There's an issue out here, there's a marine mammal, and can you come?" And he will let us know where it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Peter, thank you so much for all of this presentation. It's really been fascinating, and I've listened to you for a couple of years, and each time I listen to you, I learn something more about the right whale and about your life as a marine biologist. Really appreciate it. Can we ask people to turn their cams on for just one moment before we close out? We'd like to take a screenshot if it's possible. Irene, if you're there, or Mira, or Rachel, if you're there. If not, we'll just take it as it is, but it would be great to have a picture of, we have people from Tanzania, we have people from, where else are people from? If you can tell me, it would be great. United States, yeah. The UAE, I know. In Azerbaijan, I believe, Mira. Italy. Tanzania.
Hi.
Hi, Mira.
Yeah. Rachel, can you turn on the video?
I am from Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan capital Baku is situated Caspian Sea. Caspian Sea is a lake, but Caspian Sea have many population, but no any ocean animals, Caspian Sea. But it is so interesting as this conference for me. Thanks all Mrs. Lorraine and Mr. Peter for this interesting conference, interesting information. I am so happy to listen you for this. Thanks, very thanks. We need that information. Our children need that information. All people needs to guard all nature, animals, oceans, forest, and animals. We protect them, and protect them and keep them for the future.
Yes.
Thanks.
One of my colleagues in my region is married to a woman from Azerbaijan.
Thanks.
That's great. That's wonderful.
Okay, I'm going to stop the streaming on YouTube now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Sorry, Peter, I got disconnected. You were talking to me, and it just snapped. The connection snapped. Maybe we could stay in touch, and you could share what you were sharing about